Oh, good morning. Is Saturday morning a good time to talk about depression? Let's do it. And depression comes in many different flavors. All of us have had a period in our life where something has happened and it's been one of those suddenlies that was unexpected and it knocked you over. And it was pretty tough for a month or for 2 months. And you had what I call kind of a situational depression. It was a short season, and part of that is it was hard, but you rebounded. You had enough resilience that you made it back, and you probably found support from others, and it's like, I made it through. So we all have that. But then there's another kind of depression. And, oh boy, the World Health Organization. That's a whole other story, but we know that our depression numbers have every year gone up and has dropped to younger and younger ages. We could, it's not uncommon to see the 13-year-old who is not functioning, and really, it's depression and anxiety. So we're seeing younger ages like we've never seen before. On the flip side, we're seeing individuals, maybe they're in their 60s, and they've struggled for a very long time, and now they are not doing well at all. And so this depression, and I will talk about the different forms, is affecting all ages. All ages. And so we all know somebody, if it wasn't ourselves, and I'll tell you that I had my season of depression. I know what it's like to walk through it. And when we started the Center of Place of Hope, I had really good, genuine intentions of really, really helping. I was passionate about what we were doing. 1989. I remember the year because I had the helper's disease. I said yes to everything. This whole person model and the things we were doing was doing well. And I saw clients all the time. Morning into the evenings, coming home, 10 o'clock. Then I made all the mistakes. So go get my confession out of the way here. Then I added Saturdays, and so I am just doing this all the time. And embarrassingly, okay, I've grown a lot. I don't do this now, but on Sunday afternoons I would even meet people. And I thought I was doing what I was called to do. I thought I was doing the right thing. But what happened to me? I do have a new book on burnout. It's one of those short ones. But I crashed. I crashed big time. My health was not good. I remember getting up in the morning and going, it takes energy to breathe. It just takes that total depletion. So I hit emotional exhaustion and then total depletion. And physically, and I did not look well. In fact, my wife gave me a compliment not long ago. She says, you look a lot better now than you did back then. That's been a lot of years. But you know what happens when you get depressed, depleted, emotionally exhausted, and I wasn't doing self-care. I was not practicing very well the things I was talking about. I had good intention, But my crash, and I can tell you, it probably took me a year to get back just physical well-being. And the Lord really spoke to me about what I needed to do to stay healthy, and I had to learn something that we teach called boundaries. And if I was going to do this, I had to live really differently. And so that's why I say it's 1989. That's been a while ago. But I was in the depths of despair, and I didn't understand why. And I was, you don't think well when you're depressed. I was thinking about, I need to move, I need a way out, I will move to another state, I need to do something. And you start to be impulsive when you're depressed. And you look for that way out because you feel desperate. And so I walked through some desperation for a period of time. I know what it's like to have a depression that you can't seem to get it off of you. And I knew that, well, it was my wife and a few others who, I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of an intervention. So, that people who really love and care about you, who say that this is not okay. And so I think walking through this is part of what's made me more passionate to make sure I am practicing what I'm talking about, to actually make sure that we are living out the whole person model that we started in the early 80s. So I know there's hope for depression. And I know for my case, a lot of what I went through was self-inflicted. So there's different reasons why we get depressed, and there's different types of depression. There's this I kind of single episode or situational depression that happens, and then we start doing different things. Then there's those of us who have had struggles where it's reoccurrent. You feel like, oh, I'm doing okay, and then another episode of depression hits you, and you're wondering what's going on. And we tend to want that instant, give me the pill to make all this better. So we go to our doctor, and yes, sure enough, we have all the signs and symptoms of depression, and I got the pill. And you take the medication, and maybe for a while you feel, oh, I'm so much better. There's a very important place for medication. But we also want to dig in deeper and find out what is more root causes that's causing this depression. Why is this reoccurring in my life? Why do I keep cycling through this? Which is a sign, I talked last night about missing pieces to the puzzle. There are missing pieces of the puzzle. And if you've had episodes of depression, that's why we go, okay, let's dig deep. What's the blood work tell us? Oh, you're that low. I was so low in vitamin D when I went through this episode. Okay, my body was so depleted that for 30 days, my doctor put me on 70,000 international units of vitamin D a day. Okay? There are textbooks that say if you do over 10,000 international units, you will die. I was prescribed 70,000 international units for 30 days. That's how depleted I was. So we've got to look at what's going on in the body. So we look at the different types. You probably see on the screen there's one that says bipolar. And bipolar is an interesting type of depression. And sometimes, have you noticed how things get a little trendy? Suddenly, something happens in social media, and then everybody comes in and says, I'm bipolar. Right? And we start to look for labels to describe what's going on. And many times, our doctors spend time undiagnosing people from all the self-diagnoses, right? Because if you give yourself a diagnosis, then, okay, and then we live it out pretty well. Now, there is such thing as bipolar. The person that there's different types of bipolar, but a person that has the high highs and they stay up for 3 days and solve all the problems in the world, right? And that's that manic phase. And then after that, they have the deep, deep crash. Some great examples in the scriptures I'm pretty sure Elijah, if you know his story, probably suffered some pretty good depression because he wanted God to take his life. That's depression. So, King David had some episodes. So we have a lot of examples. So this is not new. Some of the things that we do to help, some are helpful, and I'm going to say, this is going to sound strange, but if you struggle with depression, this is probably one of the best times in history to have depression. Here's why. We have more tools and more ways of helping than ever before. Yes. And good ways. Because if you lived in ancient Greece and you had depression, see, this is how it's been here for a while. Do you know what the Greeks did? They started some of the early treatment for depression. True stories. So everything went to the church back then. And the priest had solutions for depression. It required 2 priests. And they had one where you'd be on the edge of the cliff, and there's water below you, and there's a priest in a little rowboat, and there's a priest behind you because he's going to push you off. Depression, and you're supposed to be rescued when you splash. But the idea was depression was something that had to get out of you, right? And we go through history. If you were, it's not a good time to be depressed. So, and if there were mental health issues, there was a lot of really, really, what seems pretty cruel things that were done. So, there was the spin technique. Have you heard about this one? So, this is, as history goes, not that long ago. This would be in the early 1800s, and this emerged out of Vermont. And this was a treatment that the doctors were doing for depression. And it required a spinning stool. Be interesting to demonstrate this. But remember, depression was something that had to get out of you. And so they would put you on this stool, and you would be spun. And spun, and spun, and spun. And if you can imagine this, okay, we know to stop spinning you when we see blood come out of your ears. That's how long it was done. Do you think depression got out of you? That was actually a treatment. So there was another one, and this was first done on an attorney, a depressed attorney. Can you imagine? And it was the water cure, and it was a little simpler. You used a bucket of water, and we're just going to take you and put your head in the water and hold you and keep pulling you up. But each time we're supposed to hold you in there just a little longer. Mm-hmm. Had to get it out of you. So, you see, we really haven't known what to do about depression. Yeah, early 50s. The first treatment with chemistry was actually a medication that's still used today. Thorazine. 1951. This is in Austria. Somebody else came out of Austria. I think his name was Freud. See, like I'm saying, some really odd people in my field. Freud. And this was done to guinea pigs. So Thorazine, a medication, was tested on guinea pigs, and in 1951, you could do guinea pig to human pretty quickly. So and Thorazine is kind of in a way a sedative, so the guinea pig glows over and he's out. So, okay, let's do it on a human. We still have basically that same medication. So as we move through history now, and we start to look a little more at the whole person, and we understand that body chemistry can have a big effect. We understand that some medications, if I'm on a medication for blood pressure and I read all the side effects, and side effects really are the effects, that one of them is depression. So we know that certain medications could contribute towards depression. And we know that some medications actually, you go, this is for depression, but it says it can make me suicidal. Right? Because, well, we have to list everything that possibly could happen. Yeah. Prozac. Remember Prozac? There's better ones now, but Prozac actually comes from fluoride. So you're just taking a good dose of fluoride. Now what are we saying? Fluoride should not be in the water. So in sometimes trying to help, I think we've ended up doing some things that are not always helpful. And I want to make sure what we do this is why I believe prayer and discernment, and to really look at, it's not about, our doctors, so a person comes to us, oftentimes they're on 5 or 6 different medications. And they're saying, you know what, it's not working. And they do feel that desperation. So what we look at is, a lot of times we're helping get them off of certain things, get things rebalanced. If I have estrogen or testosterone levels that are plummeting, they're super low, what am I going to feel? I'm going to probably feel a lot of depression and loss of energy. And maybe that's a huge contributor. So I just want to say it's not always what's in our mind. There are things that could happen that have created depression. Our gut is referred to as our second brain. Isn't that interesting? And more and more and more, we're learning about the relationship between what goes on in our gut and this brain. And we know that 90+% of your serotonin, that's that brain chemical, has to do with mood, has to do with sleep. Well, that's manufactured in our gut. Our healthy bacteria manufacture serotonin and that other one you've heard of, dopamine. Most medications for depression manipulate our dopamine levels. Okay? A person that has Parkinson's and some of the neurological diseases, a lot of times they're treating them with something that helps push dopamine because we're no longer manufacturing it. It's not working. So we know dopamine is made in the gut. Well, how does it get to the brain? Well, it travels we have something called the vagus nerve. It's like a highway between this brain and the gut brain. And so if that's not working, they call it the gut-brain axis. If that's not working, then that needs to be looked at because our brain needs certain chemicals in order to function properly. So just the wonder of how God made us, right? So I could take a lot of different medications, but if my gut is not manufacturing what I need it to, And you know, most all your B vitamins are made in the gut. When you think of B vitamins, what do you think of? Nervous system. And our nervous system needs those B vitamins. So God just designed us in such a way. So when we look at the whole person, you go, yeah, I've struggled with depression for 20 years and nothing's worked. Well, have we looked at everything? Have we looked at what goes in your mouth? I had a gentleman, I have permission to share this story, but he worked from home. He had a brilliant mind and did very, very well. But he suffered from severe depression. And he said, I did all the counseling. I've done every medication. You know, he studied every medication, done it all. And he came to us. And he said, you're my last hope. Now, who wants to be anybody's last hope, right? And you kind of go, okay. And you really do, inside you go, God, help us. And everybody that we work with gets a nutrition assessment. We want to know what's going in your mouth. And so he had to complete some food diaries just for 1 week. You know, everything, every beverage, water, everything that goes in your mouth for 7 days, we want to see what it is. So what we discovered, so he was given these food diaries before he actually started. We wanted to gather some information before he came. That he was doing 7 to 10 pots of coffee a day. Wow. Pots. He goes, nobody's ever asked me what goes in my mouth. And I said to him, I go, okay, so you wrote down pots, but you meant cups. No, it's pots. I go, pots. He goes, yeah, you know, it's just a home brewer. Well, what's a home brewer make? 10, 12 cups of coffee? Something like that? So he had worked himself up over time because he didn't drink anything else. How do you drink 7 to 10 pots of coffee a day? Now, I have a confession for you. We live in the Pacific Northwest. Coffee's almost a requirement. Right? I have to tell you the rest of the story. We actually own a coffee shop. We own a coffee shop in downtown Edmonds. And coffee shop cafe. And for the last 8 years, I've learned about coffee and roasting coffee. I mean, I don't really know anything about it. I'm just learning what they do and what a good coffee bean looks like and all that. So, so I drink coffee, but I don't do pots of coffee. I don't know how you could do that. But what's caffeine on higher levels do in our gut? Higher levels, usually the term is, it rinses out your B vitamins. So too much caffeine. And so but we look for it for a little bit of stimulation, wake us up. Okay, we were serving some pretty good coffee here. I had some. But that's okay. But if I have crossed a line and it's detrimental to my body, do you think, did it suddenly make sense how he could be depressed? No water, nothing else. Coffee was the only beverage. And all day long. It wasn't even good coffee he was drinking. Yeah. Probably drinking it out of a big can. So I share that, and I've never seen anybody like that since. But what we put in our mouth over time can matter. Like water. When we ask, because if you're depressed, you tend not to drink enough simple things like water. We tend to look for more stimulants, more sodas. And when we're depressed, what happens to our appetite? Well, for many, we don't feel like we have an appetite, and you don't have anything except for that Starbucks in the morning or whatever. And then many times you just go through the day and you haven't really nourished your body. But come evening, it gets pretty intense. The craving says your blood sugar is off and you're really super hungry. And then you tend to overeat, and we like high carbohydrate foods. And the evening's a little rough because that's when we eat everything. And maybe we graze through the night. If you're depressed, you love sugar. Sweet and smooth foods when we're depressed. Ice cream fit in there? I'm not saying if you have ice cream, you're depressed. But I'm saying... But if you go home and you sit there and you have a half gallon of ice cream and you're doing that every night, then that's a problem. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for depressed, we're looking for comfort. That's where the alcohol, the wine, that's where that's easy, that can slide in. And then it takes us down a whole other path, and not only are we depressed, but now we're struggling with addiction issues. So a lot of the things we do to self-medicate end up hurting us. So we always look, and I know it sounds so simple, but if I'm depressed, am I getting water improves mood, water improves blood pressure, water, and go on and on. Water improves concentration. So with the guy with the 12 or the 10 pots of coffee a day, what he had to do is drink a bottle of water in between every cup of coffee. Did that cut down the the caffeine pretty quickly? Yeah. Like, was he going to the bathroom a lot? Yes. So, as we look at, you see that, and by the way, remember there's going to be a nice QR code where we'll give you the slides from last night, the slides from today. You're going to get it all. So, that's why I'm not just going to read from the slides. I want you to also know that depression can be very complex. I call it flavors, different types of depression. And you don't need me to share with you today, psychology has its own funny language and clinical terms which are not helpful for our discussion. Do you know diagnostic categories? Do you know why those exist? We have something called insurance companies. And insurance companies want to make sure you have a diagnosis. And your diagnosis is going to have to be severe enough we're going to pay for something. But we're just going to pay a little bit over a little period of time and see if you get better. See, we have a person that works in what we call utilization review. Our person's goal is to get the insurance to say yes. Their goal is to say no. That's a full-time job. To get people the care that they need. And if one little thing, like, that depression is not severe enough, and they want to decrease the care. That's how the game works. So, which, by the way, we've been doing for 40 years, and we kind of get how it works. And most everybody that comes and sees us is using insurance, and we know how to work with it. We know how all that plays out. So, okay, as we're looking here at the whole person model, sometimes we get blinded when we're suffering from depression, and we forget what goes in our mouth matters. What about movement? You feel depressed. What do you want to do? Is either sleep, disappear, just lay on the sofa, not move much. Okay. Pandemic days threw us all inside, didn't it? So, and people didn't move as much. Some people are still not moving. So here's one of the things I would suggest. You're struggling. You remember the old-fashioned 3x5 cards? Okay, in my desk drawer, because I still do this, I pull out a 3x5 card, and I write a verse on it. And, our theme verse that I mentioned from 2 Timothy 1:7 is, "For the Lord has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind." That this whole mental health summit is about what creates a sound mind. But we've got to move, and I might write a verse on that card, and I'll put it in my pocket, and set my timer, and go for that 20-minute walk in beautiful Edmonds, and 20-minute walk, and I pull out, and I read that verse out loud. Out loud. Reading God's word out loud. 5-7 times on that 20-minute walk. I know I've got to put God's word in, and I need to hear myself saying it. Okay? That's just one little piece. I got to keep renewing the mind. And so something as simple as handwriting a verse on a 3x5 card and just carrying it with, there's something about carrying it with you too. And nobody depressed wants to go for a walk. Oh, don't even say the word gym. And you stiffen up. You don't really want to do anything. The word exercise. I was saying movement and movement. got to say exercise in a different way. But we got to start moving. And it could start that simple. The gentleman that was doing 7 to 10 pots of coffee, he was not moving. And so we had an assignment. He had to walk around the block. It was one time a day while he was with us. We needed to walk with him because he was so depleted, and he would have to just walk a little ways, and then you stop and you rest. So some of you keep track of your steps. You're at 10,000 steps before noon. You're amazing. Yeah, keep doing it. But I just want to make sure that you're covering all the bases. And we always want the instant, simple solution, right? It would just be nice to have that simple solution. It's usually a series of simple things. Usually a series. And we tend to give up way too early. And we say things because depression's like anxiety, it lies to you. Depression might be telling you in your mind, you've always been this way, it's always going to be this way. And I'm never really going to get better. So it lies to us. Keep that in mind. As you look at, sometimes we pray, Lord God, deliver me from this, and we're desperate in our prayers. Certainly understand that. My encouragement is, as we're praying, Lord God, show me, give me the wisdom, give me the discernment that I will know what are the missing pieces to the puzzle that I need to know about or I need to attend to. And it will be amazing what happens. And there is a depression, and we're going to be talking, or Amy's going to be sharing this afternoon, and that tough topic of suicide and what can drive us to even think that. But there's a depression, as we just look at it on a continuum, that is a major depressive disorder and then beyond. And the beyond is, I really do break from reality. I'm not thinking clear at all. And I start to tell myself it'd be better off if I wasn't here. It's like, just be better off. And then we tell ourselves, I mean, this is the enemy speaking, but then we tell ourselves, people would be better off if I wasn't around. And then the next in our thought is, okay, how would I do this? And then we start ruminating on different ways to take our life. That's where depression can take us. But we have stepped over a line where we're really not dealing with reality. But we've lost hope. We've lost hope. And we feel helpless. So if I've lost hope, I feel helpless, I start to think in very extreme ways. Now, you may have had, or you have somebody in your life that they keep getting to that edge. They keep getting to that edge. Maybe there's been suicide attempts. But then they come back, and then you think, they're okay. And then before you know it, they're back on that edge again. So there's a lot of different maybe triggers or things that could happen that keep taking us back to that edge. What if I have unresolved trauma in my life? What if there's significant abuse, some things I've never really dealt with? Well, I may keep recycling a lot of things. So we always look, what keeps being recycled over and over? Is there a time of year that maybe there was a significant loss in a certain month, and every year that month's hard. Might be normal, but you notice that that's when you particularly struggle, and you start to think and do things in that period of time. What if I'm with somebody that I'm in an emotionally abusive situation, and I'm constantly being emotionally abused and name-called and demeaned? So the trauma and the abuse. I really believe that we need to put attention on that to be able to walk in recovery. I know there's trauma and abuse that can be so significant that it's like I have buried this and I'm never opening up that again. And that's how I've tried to deal with it. And to even think of taking the lid off of that just simply feels overwhelming. And that's why I want to make sure whoever is helping me with this really knows what they're doing, right? And here's what's interesting. As I deal with the past hurt, trauma, you do start, not right away, but you start to feel a little lighter emotionally. And there is this glimmer that starts to come in of life, of hope. It's a glimmer. And as I continue to walk through this, I grow stronger. And something happens that we see in people's lives is they start to feel like, oh, maybe there is a purpose for me. Maybe I am supposed to live. Maybe I am supposed to feel differently. And you start to feel that maybe there is. Now, there is. You keep going. It does come together. But that's where I say people give up too soon. Or you feel like giving up too soon. I know that things will happen in life. There's sometimes, I call it a suddenly. Suddenly something happens that we never were planning on. A significant loss, an accident. We've mentioned yesterday the fires in LA, but there's been something that's happened. And it's totally outside your control. To have a period of some depression and uncertainty and anxiety, would that be a normal response? Yeah, but here's my barometer that I need to be aware of. If after a period of time I'm struggling with these three deadly emotions, here's number one is anger. Okay, another word for anger could be hurt. But if I'm struggling and it keeps re-emerging, anger can be appropriate. I can't stay stuck there. I just can't live there. But if my predominant emotion at the end of the day, and I go, how's I feeling today? And all day long I felt angry. All day long I was irritable. I was on the edge of raging. I was a rude driver, whatever. But all day long I have that anger is brewing under the surface. Okay? Okay, that's a sign that I need something is unresolved. Living with anger will make you depressed. Living with unforgiveness will make you depressed. That unforgiveness could be self, could be of others. But if I have that experience of unforgiveness and I become embittered, I will be depressed. That comes along with it. The other deadly emotion to be aware of, the next one is fear. And under fear, I'm going to put worry. Remember, worry is a mental process. It's all the what ifs. But then the next one is anxiety. If every day I have that, what we call generalized anxiety disorder, it's with me every day. Now, we all have things that happen that can create anxiety, and they do. So, but if it's a predominant emotion that does not go away, I have to look at that. If I live with anxiety, I will be depressed. Anxiety and depression can live together. I can rotate between the two, too. Okay? The next one is guilt or shame. If I have a deep, deep sense of shame, shame says I'm defective, shame says I'm ruined, shame says I'm unlovable, shame says God probably doesn't love me either. That's what shame says. Shame kind of rocks at the core of who we are. If I'm carrying shame, will I be depressed? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So as we look towards hope for depression, we have to look at, am I struggling with one of these three, I call them three deadly emotions, because they will consume you and you will have depression. Unresolved anger, hurt, fear. Okay. Now, it's interesting, we live in a culture of fear. So, some people that are glued to certain news sources are going to be afraid all the time. All the time. That's what it does. So, what are we allowing in, right? What are we allowing in? And what are we choosing to treat as truth? So, I told LaFawn, my wife, who's with us here back with Brian at the book table, I told her, let's not forget the times that we're living in, because God is at work. And it's so easy, our point of focus can be on the negative, or every day we can look and God's at work, and there's a lot to say praise God for. But when we're depressed, our point of focus is, because we can't see anything else, our point of focus will always be negative. And I can develop a sense of critical judgment. If I'm depressed, then nobody can do anything right. I'm critical of not only myself, but I'm critical of everybody and everyone. So watch for that critical judgment. If I develop a critical spirit, okay, then nobody, I probably have a constant complaining. If I'm constantly complaining, I'm going to be pushing people away after a while. Yeah. So what am I radiating? What am I radiating? Okay. You've seen this. Nobody here, but somebody enters the room and it's like their emotion and their, let's say, anger. It's felt by everybody in the room instantly. And you go, you go, oh, I better stay away from this person. Okay. So those emotions become toxic and toxic to people around us. So be sure as we look at solutions for depression, you see my whole person, look at every area. And here's a little homework we could do. A journal. Okay. And tonight, before I'm too tired to do it, say I'm going to take 15 minutes. I'm going to take that word anger, and I'm going to write down everything under that heading of anger that seems unresolved. Just for 15 minutes. Some could go on and on and on. I gave a lady who, she came in and complained, had a lot of complaints about her husband. It was a little hard for me to say much because she was complaining the whole time about her husband. And I said, we're out of time. I said, well, why don't you write it all down and bring it in and we'll talk about it next time. She brought in a legal pad, and I still remember, I counted the pages, 32 pages of complaints about her husband. Okay? Did he stand a chance? Now, were some of them pretty legitimate? I'm sure they were. Okay? But that anger, that hurt, okay? And then obviously that unforgiveness. By the way, it was a few sessions later, I called to invite him to come in. Do you know what he said? He said, no thanks, I think I'll pass. He knew he was bound to be attacked. It took a while. It took months and months. But she moved to a place of forgiveness, a radical place of forgiveness. And something happened big time in her life when she really realized the power of forgiveness. We invited the husband to come back. He must have sensed something not so negative, and he said yes. And I remember in that room, though it's been a while ago, we're in the room, and the air feels a little tense, and she has this all planned. She reaches over to her purse and pulls out this legal pad. His eyes get really big because he's thinking the blast is going to come. She takes the legal pad out and starts tearing up the pages in front. And she said, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I've held so much against you. I love you and I forgive you. Did the whole tone of the room change? Yes. Could we then from that point forward go and work on things and create great progress? Absolutely. So in that 15-minute little journal exercise, anger, hurt, see if there's any areas of unforgiveness. Just see what God brings up for you. And then the next one was fear. Take a few minutes under the heading of fear and write down all the fears, the worries, the concerns, the anxieties that you have. Some are for now, some are for the future. Anxieties about the future. And the final one is guilt. Another word for guilt could be shame. And things that you feel absolutely shameful for. That you feel so embarrassed or that have just had a profound impact on how you see yourself. So if you'll do those 3 headings, that might lead you to some things that need to be accomplished in order to have healing from depression. Okay, it's just one area of the whole person, but we want to clean out emotionally, right? And then sometimes we need somebody to help us with that. Maybe I don't know how to do the forgiveness. Other times, I need to learn how to deal with my frustrations differently than always being angry, right? So that's where like the groups here at the church and the different opportunities that are here, because most of us need to plug in and have that support, and with that support, accountability. So the Celebrate Recovery and the groups that are going on here, yeah, I'm going to plug in because I got to keep growing. Okay, and then be sure to look at, again, the whole person, that physical side and the missing pieces. It is absolutely amazing to me that sometimes, oh, we haven't checked that before. Didn't know your vitamin D was negative. Well, my body needs that. So look at every piece to the puzzle. Pray for wisdom. Pray for discernment. I know there's hope. Remember, hope comes when I sense there's a plan. Good. Okay, I have more hope if I know there's a plan. We're just going to begin to create that plan. All right? Now, we need to take a break, a depression break. No, but out there on the book table is a couple resources related to depression, and there's one I just happened to grab, Freedom from Shame. Do you know I've done 14 mini books, and do you know the publisher wants many books, and what's the reason why we want a book of 100 pages? Attention spans are gone. So thanks for your attention this morning.